Hello, welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for watching. Today we are going to paint these amazing cards. Look at these are so fun. So come along with me. I'm going to share with you how I like to paint a really light, like airy sort of look to it. And then this one is more dark with lots of drama, and it is so much fun. We are using the Colorado Craft Company stamp. This one right here, it's really a good bang for your buck. It's a fox's life, and I have one for like the ocean, and then one for like a meadow or like a forest, and it's just going to be so much fun. Things that you're going to learn in this class or in this tutorial is I'm going to show you how to use that mica pigment to get some beautiful galaxy look to it, and this little moon. I actually didn't use masking fluid. I'll show you how I like to shape my moon. I don't believe that moons are ever really a perfect circle. When you see them in nature, it's usually there's clouds and stuff. So anyways, that's my process of how do I make a moon. And then here I'm going to show how I paint with a very light wash, wet into wet, to get a very soft blue, and then I'm going to go in and add value with watercolor pencils. So that's what you're going to be learning in this tutorial. Otherwise, check out Colorado Craft Company. They are awesome. I love their stamps. Their stamps are clear, but they're illustrated by Anita Jerome, and I just love her style and her animals. So all right, so supplies that you're going to need 140-pound watercolor paper. That is what I'm using, and I stamped the Fox's Life from Colorado Stamp Company onto that using a Misty, but you could probably just use a normal stamp block to stamp it on. And I'm using my Paul Rubens watercolor palette that I put in. I made my watercolor palette so that I could use it more often and have all the colors ready for me. And then I'm using a round brush. I used archival ink to stamp my stamped image on so it doesn't bleed. And I'm off to getting a wash of blues onto the sky area. And I am using a couple of different blues, and I'm actually adding some purple. You'll see more of that purple in a later video, but I'm just adding, I'm getting my moon started, and all I'm doing is I'm just really layering up the blues, and I'm taking my brush, and it's damp and clean, and I'm just wiping up, I'm erasing the blue to make it a circle-ish like. I'll be adding a couple of layers of blue, so night skies work really well with layering. So I'm adding some of that sap green, and that blue in the sky is just going on top of the wet sap green just to blend in. I want a little bit of green, but I also want it to look like it's in the evening, so that's where I was adding some of that darker blue. All right, once the sky is dry, which it is, I can go back in and add another layer. Yes, another layer. I will be making this one to be a bit darker and more pronounced, and it is a fun process. I want to make sure that that moon is very bright. That is the brightest thing on the paper. And I am adding a little bit more purple just to give the sky some color, and then I'll be letting that dry and coming back again with one more layer. But I like to have my lines to be softened, so that's what I'm doing there. All right, as it's dried again, you guessed it, I'm going to work on my fox. Finally, we get to the fox. And this is just a red. I use Venetian red. It's a very earthy red. It reminds me of red oxide if you use oil or pastels, but it's just a beautiful red for foxes and for landscapes. So vermilion red. and then I'm taking away a little bit of that red just to give the fox, like as if the moon is sitting on the fox. And now I'm going to be going into my tree. Alright, so for the tree, I'm using burnt umber and a little bit of that blue mixture. So the blue has a little bit of ultramarine and Prussian blue or indigo and some of that purple. So I'm adding a little bit of that blue with the burnt umber. It really makes the brown rich and beautiful. And at this point, it's a wet into wet technique. So I put a wash down where the tree is, and then I just added some more browns to it, and I'm just adding and getting more value in. So I'm taking a green brush tip marker just to add some green to the tree leaves. It can be any kind of dark green. It just needs to have a little bit of green tint to it. And now for the tree, I'm just adding that texture. It is wet into wet, but I'm splattering into the wet part of it to get it a really nice texture. Alright, so I'm adding a little bit more detail to the fox's leg. I just want to be able to get some value, some darker tones onto the fox. And so I'm taking my time and I'm making sure that my edges are blended so there's no harsh edges. And I'm just really enjoying the process. Alright, one of my favorite new pigments is this Fine Tech Dark Teal, and I'm just using this to splatter on to the sky. The sky is like a little damp, and so sometimes I'll get a little bit of like dots in the splatter, and sometimes it'll just kind of spread out wherever the water might be. And then I'm going back in with a dark Prussian blue indigo mix of color, and I'm just adding one more layer of blue because I want that moon to really pop. And of course, the more layers you put, the more careful you have to be, so I am taking my time with that. And I'm also going to get that corner of the tree, and then I'm going to splatter again a little bit more on while it's really wet, just to give a little bit more. And I do have a tiny bit of white on my palette that you'll notice. It's not very much. Anyways, now that I got my sky darker, I need my tree to be darker so that the fox can really pop. And so I'm just adding a little bit more pigment to the tree. I'm just like, it's very loose and perfect. All right, so on to the next one. This is Mission watercolor that I'm using for the teal, cobalt teal. It's one of my favorites. And then the other blue is just ultramarine. And then I'm adding some yellow ochre. What you didn't see me do was spray the whole card. The whole card is wet, so that's where you're getting that wet into wet technique. But if you have pigment straight from the palette, the pigment will go where the water is, and that makes for a really delightful time to paint. Now I do use the yellow ochre and dioxazine violet a lot to make a brown, and that's what you see me doing right there. For a really fun color, I love cobalt violet, and that's what you see me using on the shell, which seems very, very it's a really beautiful natural color. And then I use a little bit of yellow ochre to go with it, and it just blends beautifully for shells and stuff. And so what I'm doing here is I'm taking off pigment. It is dry enough that I can pick off the pigment, but still leaves a little bit of a stain. And then I'm just going in with my sunshine, sunrise, tropical sunrise is what it's called. It's an iridescent color from Daniel Smith, and I absolutely love it. And now this is just burnt sienna that I am adding to the ground. I really love painting the ground because you can get some really beautiful colors. And now for the fox, this is a mixture of that cobalt violet and a little bit of the burnt umber. And I get this really pretty brown color. All right, so now that my picture is dried, I can go in with a colored pencil, and I'm going around where the rocks are, and I'm just negative coloring really the ground, and I'm just adding some of this colored pencil to it. I'm also going to be using a terracotta color from Derwent just to give the foxes a little bit more red. I was hoping that the red would show through. It didn't, so I'm adding that red, that natural red, to the fox through a watercolor pencil. I like watercolor pencils because they are a little bit more opaque than translucent, so I can kind of get away with getting my colors the way I want it to with a colored pencil. And now with a clean brush, it's very damp. There's not a whole lot of water to it, and I'm just going to move that pigment that I just put down on the foxes around and just get that red to smooth out a little bit. And I really kind of like how that works. And now I'm taking a clean damp brush, and I'm just going around wherever I put color in to just add to it. I don't want to take away from it, but I want to add to it just like that, so it looks like it's just part of the sand. And now I'm taking this Rose Madder Lake. It's so gorgeous, and I wanted some pink hues to the shells, as I feel like shells should have a little bit of pink to them. And that is what I'm doing, and I'm just going to leave it the way it is and call it done. All right, thank you so much for watching. I did put them on card panels or card bases, and that is the end of that. I had so much fun. I hope this taught you a little bit more how to paint animals. You can use these techniques with any and all of your animal watercolor needs. And again, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you found this content to be relevant for you. Thank you so much for watching. Have fun painting.